Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has claimed that Vladimir Putin threatened his life on a phone call in the run-up to the Ukraine war.
Well, the Russian president reportedly said, "I don't want to hurt you, but with a missile, it would only take a minute."
Let's speak to the defence and diplomatic editor of the Sunday Express, Marco Giannangeli. Marco, what do you make of this revelation?
Well, it's certainly unusual to get a verbatim account of a conversation between two premiers so soon after the event. But I don't think, I don't think anyone should be surprised at the tone which Vladimir Putin took. The fact is, this is the language he uses. This is the language he has used with Germany. This is the language he has used with France. And with Germany, with France, with others, it's been very effective. I think he hadn't counted on the fact that it perhaps wouldn't be quite so effective with Boris Johnson. Let's not forget that this happened during the process where leaders were seeing what was coming and were trying to prevent it. And really, I think my one surprise is why the Prime Minister didn't reveal it at the time.
Yeah.
I think that had he done so, any vacillation, any doubts that existed within the NATO community of well, look, is this guy serious? Is he really going to do something? Might well have disappeared.
What I'm really interested in is what response, if any, Boris Johnson had outside of blah, 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 blah. You know, how did he react to all of this? Because I would relish, I mean, if it was me sitting in that phone and Putin made that threat to me, well, I'd come back with a double your money threat back to him. But you just sort of think, does he think he really scares people? I mean, you know, Johnson could have his finger on the button as well. He can fire missiles. I'm dying to know what he said in response.
Well, I mean, honestly, Eamon, I don't know. But my read on it is it would have been more of an eye roll than anything else. I mean, this was just confirmation of what we already knew, what Britain, what the US, and some others were trying to convince the rest of Europe that, look, this guy is serious. And yes, he is prone to rhetoric, but in this case, you know, he is not bluffing. I think that's how we would have taken it. I think from Putin's point of view, it was part of a sort of a last hurrah to try to dissuade Britain from taking any further active part in mounting any sort of coalition, which of course we did, following the invasion. I don't know what the Prime Minister actually said to Mr. Putin. I imagine it would have been polite and dismissive.
It's always in the headlines for almost every story we talk about. I mean, this is a three-part series talking about the start of the war, coming up for the one-year anniversary on the 24th of February. And in that series, they talked to a whole bunch of people, including the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, Jens Stoltenberg from NATO, President Zelensky as well. I suppose lots of people will be poring over it and asking themselves, what have we learnt in that time? And where are we today on the first anniversary? What would your assessment be of that?
Well, we have learned so much, haven't we? Let's not forget that before the February 22 invasion, Russian forces were tested in short-term combats. We've seen them in Georgia. We saw the air forces in Syria. But this is the first time since Afghanistan that Russian forces, Soviet at that time, have found themselves embroiled in something which seemingly has no end date. And we have seen, and not just us, I mean, NATO, has seen how effective or ineffective the Russian war machine has been. Now, let's remember that in February last year, there were calls by Kyiv 4 tanks, 4 fighter jets. And the response for fighter jets then was, well, now hang on, it's going to take 6 months to train them. We suspect it'll be over long before then. Let's not jump the gun. Well, here we are, a year later, and, you know, in hindsight, one could reasonably argue that, you know, Ukraine could have had tanks and could have had fighter jets 6 months ago, and they would have, you know, been very effective. You know, what have we learned? We have learned that what we hoped but didn't realize, that Russia's war machine, particularly its army, the way it's formulated, the top-down structure, which really doesn't have an NCO cadre. It really doesn't have the type of tiers that NATO armies have. We've seen how badly that does on the ground. We've seen how bad they are in logistics. And, it has been an eye-opener.
Marco Giannangeli, really appreciate your take on things. Marco was the defence editor of the Sunday Express. We'll say goodbye to you.